Welcome to another week on SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It's Monday, September 14th, and I'm Blair Kirchhoff. The Chiefs didn't play on Sunday, but there were plenty of viewing options in just about every sport thanks to the rescheduling of events due to COVID-19. Star columnists Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam Mellinger join me to talk about a few of these offerings. We break down the first weekend of the NFL season and share the idea that we watch games through a Chiefs prism these days. We lament the first weekend of college football in our area with Kansas State and Kansas losing, and we wrap things up by marveling at what the Royals and Aldaberto Mondesi have done this past week. So let's get going with Sam Mellinger and Vahe Gregorian. Fellas, what's up? How you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing fine.
Blair, the word I keep coming back to is dandy.
Yeah, you do. I've heard that more than once today. With the Chiefs not playing on Sunday, so when the Chiefs have a Sunday game, whenever it kicks off, noon, 3:25, 7 o'clock, it just takes up the entire day. It's hard to pay attention to anything else. But without the Chiefs playing, I'm flipping through channels on Saturday and Sunday, and my God, there's so much sports going on right now. It's unbelievable. I don't think there's ever been a time in history when. Well, I know there's not been a time in history when you've had, look, we're already busy in September anyway, right? With the convergence of baseball, the NFL, college football, and here, Major League Soccer. But then you throw the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the U.S. Open golf is this week, U.S. Open tennis was this weekend. It's a little difficult to sort through everything. So I guess my question is, what did you guys favor on television this weekend?
Well, I was focused on the NFL for the most part. I watched a lot of games. I was a good Kansas City guy too. Caught some of the Royals as they make a push for the playoffs or something.
They're doing something.
Yeah, and then watched. I don't know. It probably ended up being half of the sporting game that night. But you're right, man. I mean, it might be true that there's never been more sports. Like televisable sports, like major college professional sports on at one time than there is right now. That may be an objective fact.
I think you're right. And this was
right?
Right. I mean, this was the full, the first, full, it's not full, but college football was a little more full than it was the last week. Yeah. Not as full as it could be because the Big Ten and the Pac-12 aren't playing still, but all the most of the Big 12 and ACC teams in action. So you had options for college football watching, and mostly again empty stadiums everywhere in every sport. Though what struck me about the emptiness of stadiums was not the NFL. I guess I'm used to it now. Having watched some college football the first week and seeing the empty stadiums, and baseball, of course, but tennis. I watched the U.S. Open final, the men's final yesterday, and Dominic Thiem, by the way, won a fantastic final, his first major. Nobody in the stands except for coaches, his trainers. So there couldn't have been more than a couple dozen people in the stands watching the U.S. Open tennis final. And for an event like that, I mean, it really, really does need fans and to add to the atmosphere. I was flipping around the NFL like you were, Sam, on Sunday, and a lot of crowd noise piped in. I'm still not sure how I feel about that. What do you think?
I don't like it, but I understand that I'm not the target demo here. With I'm going to watch, and to me, it's more interesting to have no crowd noise because you can hear things that you're not used to hearing. Like, I just look at this as kind of an opportunity in so many different ways of delivering a different experience. But I also understand just, the idea that a more casual fan might think that's weird and want the noise piped in. So I understand why they're doing it, but I would love it if it was just silent. I think that would be really cool to hear.
I'm with Sam on that, Blair. And for some reason, I don't know if you guys will agree with this, but the noise feels more intrusive to me in the NFL than it really does in baseball. I don't know why. I'm not really bothered by it in baseball. I think over time I've come to realize I'd appreciate just hearing the raw noise on the field. But football, I feel like that noise is all the more appealing, right? I mean, it's not just yelling at the ump when there's a bad pitch call. It's the sounds of the game. We can hear the sounds of the game in a different way, and to some degree, we have. I certainly noticed that while I was watching the second half of the Kansas game, which I didn't hear you guys mention that you watched, but I did notice that it really came alive. It kind of was crackling in a little different way, even with some noise piped in.
So there were no fans at that game, and of course no fans at Kauffman Stadium for Royals games. But the American heartland is been pretty welcoming to fans, as we've seen. Right, the Chiefs had their almost 16,000 on Thursday night. Sporting Kansas City's had 2 games now at Children's Mercy Park with fans in it. Kansas State had fans in the stands for its game on Saturday. So. At least if you're a sports fan around here, your only option is not your options aren't limited to just TV. You can go to games, and now if I saw this correctly, watching Sporting last night, they're going to open up to even more fans for the home games that are on the schedule now. So I guess the hospitals will tell us if this was a good idea in the next few weeks, right?
Yeah. And this is interesting. Just as it applies to the Chiefs, for instance, what I don't yet understand about any tracing methods is whether we will really know if, for instance, Arrowhead had some elements of a super spreader, just because I'm not sure how the contact tracing really plays out. I mean, do you guys think that if it turns out there were a number of cases that went into and then came out of Arrowhead, that we'll really understand that?
I think it depends on where you get tested and how those things come about. Like, my hope is that would be one of the first questions if you're test positive. The 3 of us have not had this experience, right? But I would assume they say, where have you been? Write the names down. Have you been to any major events? So I don't know. It's we're all guessing, and I've been a trust the experts guy the whole time, and even knowing that they're guessing with more information and more attuned to these things than we are. But I mean, if I will say this, like I know there's different perspectives and different experiences and stuff, but I thought it was going to be an utter, complete 100% S show on Thursday night. Like I just thought that, I don't know why, but that's just what I thought. And it was much more organized. It looked more organized. I'm trying to think of a different word, but it looked better than I expected.
Did you feel like it was able to be sort of enforced, or at least people respected it in some way that you hadn't counted on, Sam?
Yeah. So I mean, I've talked to, I don't know, a handful of people, I guess, that were at the game. And, there's differing opinions, right? I mean, I think some of it depends on where you were sitting. Some of it depends on, just sort of randomness of what stuck out. But the prevailing, not unanimous, but I would say like consensus, is that the Chiefs were making every honest effort that they could. The one thing over and over that people talked about was the seats being zip tied. And that was, a major thing in keeping everybody distance. If you notice, like the K-State game, for instance, and they don't have a lot of seat backs, it's a lot of bleachers. So you're not, I don't know, you could come up with some other solution. I don't know what it would be, but, that was different. Like there were fans that were in bunches at that game in a way that it wasn't at the Chiefs. They had not ushers, but some sort of stadium employees that, walking up and down the aisles with signs promoting, distancing and masking and stuff like that. So I felt like nothing's 100%, right? And I also think about like if there weren't 15,985 people, whatever they ended up announcing, where would those 15,985 people watch the game? And would it have been in, big watch parties, 20 people in a house, and would that have been better or worse? I think about that kind of thing too. But it looked to me and it sounded to me from the people I've talked to, at least, and there's different opinions out there, that the Chiefs were doing their honest best. And so obviously we all hope, right, that it was pulled off and there's not going to be a major outbreak that can be tied to this or the K-State game or any of the sporting games or anything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And
I think I do think that. Well, I think it helped that the Chiefs had 2 open practices, right? And so they had a couple dress rehearsals.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking after the first practice, we saw the photos of fans sitting close together, some without masks, and Mark Donovan, the Chiefs president, addressed that in a news conference afterwards. And I think the message was pretty clear to Chiefs fans. Look, we're one of the very few stadiums in the NFL that is going to open to fans. Let's do this right. And I sense that was the case, in terms of social distancing.
Yeah, I thought, again, I just thought they did as well as they could. One of the perspectives that I was really interested to hear of the people that were there is a friend of mine, and he is both an avid Chiefs fan, and he's also a doctor. And I was just curious, like, sort of his perspective on this, because he's kind of got both sides. And his thing, he thought, just like what we were just talking about, nothing's 100%, but he thought that he was like proud that this was able to happen, and appreciated at least the chance, and he seemed to think that it went fairly well. So I don't know. Again, we'll see, but I do like, again, trust the experts, and that's kind of how I've been this whole time. And if they say it's good, then let's give it a try. You're distanced, you're outside, all those things. There's some factors working in your favor. And I also think about, like, the Nelson Atkins is open now, right? And I don't know all of their protocols, but that's indoors. And things are opening back up, and I don't know if they should, but again, trust the experts, and these things are all cleared by public health officials. So let's do our best.
I tell you what, too, this makes me think of something. I've tried to be cognizant of this all along, but like, just because we might have a preconceived notion of whether something fits or works, doesn't mean we shouldn't try to adapt to understanding how it did or didn't go and keep evolving with it, right? I'm not calling us scientists. I don't mean that. But I felt a kind of the spider sense told me this wasn't a good idea to do have that many people come into one place. And yet I've tried to stay open-minded about it, and certainly want to see it work out. And I'm persuaded that from the way it's been treated so far, that it has a chance, and it's much more reasonable than I understood it to be, or than I projected it to be at the time.
Well, and maybe the Chiefs' experience will influence other NFL teams to start letting fans in on a limited basis. We'll have to see. Okay, let's take a break here, and we'll be back right after this. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners: unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Vahe Gregorian and Sam Mellinger are here today. We're talking all things Kansas City sports, and the Chiefs played Thursday. They're at the LA Chargers on Sunday, which means they did not play this weekend. But I now look at the NFL differently. I don't know about you guys, but everything. I look at every result like, well, how does this affect the Chiefs? How does this? The Ravens look really good, and they play in a couple weeks, and Chargers, got by the Bengals, and boy, the Seahawks look good, and Packers looked okay, and potential Super Bowl opponents, different than previous years. So, what were your first weekend impressions? Although we got a couple games tonight, but just overall first weekend impressions, Sam.
Well, I feel exactly the way that you do when I watch other games. And, can this team beat the Chiefs? And I thought the Bills were impressive, although they were playing the Jets. I thought the Ravens were impressive, although they were playing the Browns. The Seahawks looked terrific. Russell Wilson, that guy, like, somehow I think he's become underrated in the last few years.
That's a good point.
And that guy, he might be the second best quarterback in the league. I think there's a reasonable case to be made. I did notice, and again, you got to think about opponents, but the Patriots won pretty convincing. I know the score wasn't a blowout, but that there wasn't much doubt of who was going to win that game. And Tom Brady did not have the best game. That stuck out to me. But as far as like the Chiefs, again, like maybe I'm giving an unfair discount to what the Ravens did because it's the Browns. But the two teams that stuck out were the Saints. That was really impressive. 34-23. What they did to Tom Brady, scoring 34 points, all that. And a team that I don't think a lot of people have been talking a bunch about anyway is the Packers. And I think that the Packers and Vikings are both good teams, both, sort of contenders to go to the Super Bowl from the NFC. And I've kind of had the suspicion that Aaron Rodgers may be just on sort of an FU tour in 2020. And it certainly looked like that. Devontae Adams had a huge day. But one thing that I didn't think about before yesterday is how the lack of crowd noise can affect the play in this way that, when there's an empty stadium, guys like Aaron Rodgers especially can have more control over the line of scrimmage and changing routes, changing protections and things like that. And I wonder if that's even an additional advantage for a guy like that his brain, his experience, can have even more of an impact. Something I hadn't considered until watching the games yesterday. I'm just interested to see if that continues to play out.
Yeah, and probably fewer false start penalties as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
How about you, Vahe?
Yeah, I love that. The way this started with the point you made, Blair, it's so true. My whole context on watching the rest of the NFL has just been reframed by this. Like, it's almost like it's a wild card weekend. The Chiefs have the bye, and you're kind of waiting to see who they're going to play. You're just sort of trying to assess the field. So that stuck out to me too. That feeling. I don't know that I can add anything to that great summary Sam gave. A really great insight. The one thing, this is just a really minor thought, I think, but it stuck out to me how much the Patriots were ground game to win, and Cam Newton's dementia that he might add that way. And I bring that up because I think we tend to think of the Patriots as kind of through, but it got me thinking about people trying to find an antidote or a book to play against the Chiefs, and whether somebody they can really run effectively if they reorient a little bit more that way. Might be a little bit kryptonite yet. Guess we'll get to see that in a couple months, but nothing else really to add other than I think the Chiefs will beat the Chargers based on what we saw yesterday.
I think I saw they're an 8.5-point favorite, the first line, which is.
Well, it's funny because I was trying to look up the number, whatever that streak is, or Andy's record against the Chargers. And if you Google Andy Reid versus Chargers, the first thing that comes up is why the Chargers should not hire Andy Reid. It would be a terrible hire for them.
That's great.
Which I kind of got a little chuckle out of.
Yep, what a disaster that would have been. I'll say this: the other team that impressed me this weekend were the Arizona Cardinals, going into San Francisco and winning. I don't know what to make of the 49ers this year. I wonder if they're going to have a little bit of the Super Bowl hangover, and a little kind of what the Rams had the year after they went to the Super Bowl and last year. The other thing is, I was just really impressed with the quality of play in the first week. And boy, are the players going to have an argument about doing away with preseason football after what I saw on the first week. Maybe we'll find out at the end of the week when everything's tallied up that the injury count is a little higher than what we'd expect from a first week. But my gosh, I was impressed with the level of play this weekend.
Yeah, I think it was already trending towards 2, right? Preseason
Right, it
games.
was.
And I don't know. You're right, man. This is the only thing is, the players and the owners are, technically partners with the salary cap, and that money's got to be made up somewhere else. I would think, and the only compelling argument to me for the preseason is just, those bottom of the roster guys, and having a preseason doesn't increase the number of jobs, but it does increase the chance for, some of those guys to make an impression. And not just that, but for the coaches to recognize the impression, and especially this preseason. And I know the Chiefs had, one of these stories of a guy that people probably didn't expect to make the team. But, with fewer practices than usual, it's just harder to, sort of recognize those guys. And that's a compelling case. I don't know if it's compelling enough to have the preseason because, and this is very different than college, by the way. I thought K-State showed a lot of, I guess we'll talk about this, but I thought K-State showed sort of a lack of, typical spring practices and all that. But the NFL, I mean, if you didn't know any better, that could have been week 10. Everything looked pretty clean.
It did.
The only thing I'd add is, Sam, it's a great point about, the bottom of the roster churn. But I keep coming away with the thought there that it since it doesn't change the amount of jobs, I sort of feel like, okay, that's too bad. But the cream will rise to the top somehow with these guys who are going to, be maneuvered around onto the rosters someplace or another. It's a little bit of a bummer for them, but I do think in the bigger picture, that's something that can be done without, meaning the preseason games.
Andy Reid always says, always in the third, fourth week of the preseason that, at least now you're on tape. He tells those guys below the cut line, we got, other teams now have tape on you, and that's why. Right. That's why preseason game 4 is important, right? So you can get on tape and other teams can see you play. So, all right, let's talk about the college football weekend. Listen, there's no other way to spin it. A bad weekend for K-State, for KU, for Iowa State. Those 3 teams lost to the Sun Belt teams. Of course, it's really easy to just dismiss those programs, just say, it's they're all disappointments. Iowa State was actually in the top 25 and got beat and lost to Arkansas State. But I don't know. I don't want to get too down on these teams yet. It's so different. I mean, some teams got to practice, other teams didn't. The number of practices were different. Yes, Big 12 teams supposedly should have superior athletes and better depth. I think somehow the coronavirus may have affected depth for some of these teams. So I don't think KU, K-State, Iowa State should panic. But unfortunately for them, they did take the loss all on TV, on national TV, and there's no other non-conference game to make amends for that. Iowa State doesn't get to play Iowa. And there's I forgot who K-State's marquee non-conference game was against this year, Vandy or Mississippi State or somebody. They don't get to play that game. So it was just a bad first impression for these schools.
Blair, I feel like, and Sam, I feel like I can see it as a blip for Iowa State or K-State and for all the reasons you mentioned. But I think the trouble for KU is that it's really just kind of part of the same through line, right? I mean, we don't see anything really different there. And again, there's mitigating factors in the sense of it being early in the season and all that. But it looked to me like the better team won, and that seems problematic for the state of the program here under Les Miles.
No, yeah, it looked like if you didn't know any better, you'd think that the bye game was the other way around.
Yeah.
And, there was that moment, it was their second or third touchdown, I think, that that KU gave up, and you could hear again without fans, you can hear things you don't normally hear, and you just hear, these boys can't play with us. These boys can't play with us, and they were right, And look, like there was the moment, later on in the game, the onside kick, that is a really close call, and Jesse Newell had a great, he looked up the rule book and took a screenshot of the moment, and if the interpretation is body over the line, not feet, I think they got the call right by like half a blink, but I just don't know how often you see that called. And so that's a frustrating thing. Who knows how the game would have played out, right? There's no guarantee that KU would have won, obviously. K-State is a little bit different to me that I felt like, Jonathan Adams, that guy is a monster.
Oh, big time, wide receiver for Arkansas State.
That guy jumps out of the screen. But I do think that there was some, mitigating factors or whatever, in that, Arkansas State had a game against Memphis, and Arkansas State had, I forgot the exact breakdown, but I mean, just a significant advantage in just practice prep time for that game. And I did think, there were some plays that K-State left, particularly in the passing game, where they were off by a half a second or a few inches. That could have been big plays. Arkansas State also hit on some trick plays, and so I wonder. I guess what I'm trying to say is that if KU had that rematch in a month, I think they're getting the same score, and if K-State had a rematch in a month, I'm not sure. I think K-State might be able to win that. All that, Arkansas State was without 9 starters? Is that right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's why I saw where the line jumped in favor of Kansas State that week.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Jesse earlier. He made the point last week that that's something to keep an eye on is the line jumps. Those who make the line have inside information that others do not.
Yep.
And some of that, is who's available to play and who isn't. And apparently, Arkansas State left some players back in Jonesboro and some starters even, and still was able to get it done against the Wildcats.
Yeah, as long as number 9 is on that bus, that's
it doesn't. Yeah, and they even rotated quarterbacks. Didn't matter who was throwing to him either. That guy was such a stud. The other thing about Kansas State is they. All new offensive line, right? They were breaking in 5 new starters. I think they were only 2 starts or something among those 5 in their college careers, and I thought that had an impact on the Wildcats as well. Iowa State loses to Louisiana Lafayette, and they return a punt and a kickoff for a TV, and it got for a touchdown, and it got me thinking that special teams is something that probably suffered by lack of practice in the preseason. They just probably don't have enough time to work on everything, and certainly in Ames, the special teams took a beating on Saturday. And okay, let's finish it up with a little Royals talk. 6 in a row. That's pretty good. 20 and 28. They're off today. Open a 2-game series at Detroit. Off on Thursday, and then go to Milwaukee for a series. Look, I guess technically they can still finish 500. They're certainly trending in the right direction. There's just some good signs right now with the Royals, and probably the best sign is they don't have the White Sox on their schedule the rest of the season. But the other great sign, of course, is Aldaberto Mondesi. So, Sam, what's going right with the Royals?
Yeah, this doesn't matter at all, but does it not seem like this is kind of what the Royals do, that it's like once the NFL season starts, Brady Singer takes a no-hitter into the 8th inning when the Chiefs are playing on a standalone national broadcast. I mean, again, it doesn't matter at all. It's just a peculiarity. Mondesi, I mean, he just looked so terrible, right? And I know that there were a lot of people like, you got to send this guy out, you got to whatever. But these last, 6 games, 7 games, whatever it's been. I mean, this is why. He is so talented. There was a home run. One of the home runs he hit, I think it was Saturday. It was either Friday or Saturday. He was batting from the right side, and it wasn't the best swing.
It was like a half a swing.
Yeah,
almost.
And he's kind of leaning over, and he yanks it 420 feet or whatever over the left field wall. I mean, if you've got a guy who's that fast that can do that, I mean, that is absolutely remarkable. And I know he struck out 3 times. He was 0 for 4 with 3 strikeouts yesterday on Sunday. But he's been taking some walks. It's just it's a mental thing. I really do. That's what it looks like to me. I don't know if you guys, it's just the body language. When he believes it, he can do anything. And it seems like he believes it right now.
I agree with you so much about the body language on him. I mean, the difference now is pronounced, but also the way you can see it when he is not believing is really almost like you gotta do something. Like you gotta throw a bucket of cold water on him or something because it's so notable. Mm-hmm. It's funny. There's a lot of different reasons that they've had this streak, but if you just looked at him, Sam, you really broke down those numbers for the piece you wrote on him about 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago. If he had just been decent, average to okay, I think he was in position to, maybe have affected 3 or 4 other games, and the season would look a little different. And that's a lot to heap on his shoulders, but I think it just shows how pivotal he is.
Yeah, he's just got different talent, and it's just sort of game-changing talent. And he can change the game when he's on the base paths. He can change the game with a home run. On defense, I mean, it's pretty remarkable what his speed can do. And I'm just looking. It's been 7 games, 4 home runs, 3 walks. I mean, still 13 strikeouts. But the OPS is 1.037, and that includes the 0 for 4 yesterday. So, I mean, he's got it all. He just it's a chicken and egg thing, right? Like, how do you get confidence if you're not producing?
Right.
And if you need confidence to produce, but I'll say this: like, I was skeptical. He hit the home run, and immediately Matheny bumps him from hitting 8th to hitting 2nd. And when I saw it, I was like, ooh, that seems aggressive. If what we're all seeing is true about, the confidence and the body language, why not just let him get comfortable down there for a little bit and build up? But gosh, I mean, if it had any effect, what Matheny did, it was certainly a positive effect.
Yeah.
No, it's been fun to watch. I don't watch all 9 innings of the Royals game sometimes, but I always kind of keep up with what's going on my phone. And when he comes to bat, I make sure to switch over.
Yeah.
That's where it is with the Royals. So
and it hasn't been just him too. I mean, Hunter Dozier's killing it.
Perez being back in the lineup
that's
made a
huge difference. Franco, I mean, they've got some guys going. And then, Brad Keller, I forgot his pitch count yesterday, but, 9 innings, gave up, just 5 hits?
I think it was under 110.
Yeah, 112 or 1 right in there. Yeah,
that guy's a stud. Guys like that too that rely on, sinkers. There's just a lot of fastballs. When you can pitch like that, I'm not saying this is who he is at all, but Roy Halladay was like that, where it was just. I remember Zach Greinke saying I was talking to him about other pitchers, who he likes watching, and I remember him just saying I hate watching Roy Halladay. He's his games are so boring. It's just the same pitch over and over. Another ground ball to second, And Keller's got some of that, it's just such cold efficiency when he's going right. Anyway,
such dull, numbing efficiency.
Yeah. And like anything with Zach, you understand where he's coming from. It's repetitive, and it is amazing. It is remarkable, but no, Zach doesn't care about that.
All right, guys, great catching up with you. We'll do it again soon.
All right, Blair.
Thanks, Blair.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our production staff of Derek Donovan, Randy Mason, Beth Welsh, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Vahe, Gregorian, and Sam Mellinger for stopping by and talking all things sports. Links to their stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, earlier in the episode, you heard me talk about the Sports Pass offer. It still stands and still a good one, $30 for a year's worth of sports coverage, and that includes a sports extra that comes with the e-edition. There are 67 additional pages of national sports coverage today. 67 sports pages in the e-edition. Well, here's an even better offer. Buy the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports, news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details are at account.kansascity.com/subscribe. That's account.kansascity.com/subscribe. And whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting and supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back on Tuesday with another episode.